Hi, everybody. JT, just before we started recording, said this is weird. So, JT, I'm just going to make this more weird.
That's fine with
Staring
me.
in my eye. JT, thanks for joining us today. Can you just tell us a little bit, what's your background and how did you become the design review guru?
The design review guru, that's a pretty big title.
That's our title for it.
So my background is, I came out to Arizona 40 some years ago to go to school at the Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture. Got my master's degree in architecture there. But really most of my professional career has been in large scale master plan communities. So I'm a registered architect, been registered for 35 years now, but I've spent time doing large scale master plan communities sort of from start to finish in a way. So I worked on Desert Mountain in North Scottsdale, 8,200 acres, and spent a good part of 30 years on that. And then out in Verrado, out in the West Valley, 8,800 acres, spent a better part of almost 20 years working on that. So everything from original concept envisioning through implementation, execution, and then doing design review in both of those places.
In your experience, what's the value and purpose of design review in a large community like Eastmark?
I think the obvious answer to that people always talk about is, to preserve property values and maintain the community character. But I think it's actually a bigger thing than that, because you have to take a look at a place like Eastmark, and it started out with the vision that the developers of Brookfield and DMB did to create a truly unique community. But they had this grand vision. But a grand vision isn't any good until you can execute it and implement it correctly. And they then had a team that helped really bring all that together, the streets, the parks, the character, the houses, the architecture, the details. But there's another component, that it's the long-term maintenance and continuation of that, because anything that starts out with a good vision and a good quality, if it's not properly maintained, will eventually start to degrade and disintegrate. And that's where I think design review is such an important part of this continuing process in a community like Eastmark. It allows homeowners to customize, individualize, expand, grow, change with the times, and yet it holds together the bigger picture of the community and the bigger picture of the vision that was originally established, and really the bigger picture that people bought into early on when they chose Eastmark as the place for their home. And without that kind of careful, thoughtful approach to all those little details that go on over decades and centuries, that's the stuff you want to have there to be right. And that's why the design review process is so important. Because without that, things slowly chip away. They slowly start to degrade. And suddenly, it's like something that started out as really nice and is rusted apart and it's no longer there. We want to keep this so that Eastmark gets better with age, not worse with age. Eastmark every year is a better place. And I always look at master plan communities not in the perspective of today and tomorrow, but I look at them in perspective of 50 and 100 years, because so much in our society is somewhat disposable, right? I have to have the latest iPhone or the latest whatever, I throw it away. But you think about a community and your houses, your neighbors, those are things that will be here for centuries. And we have to hold them together. And if you look around the country and you say, I always like to say to people, what are some of the best, coolest places you've ever been to, anywhere in the world? And they often talk about these places that have quality, integrity, they're held together, they're maintained well, because those are the things that people aspire to have. Well, we should all have that in our community here as well. So everybody's contribution to maintaining that quality is important. Now, at Eastmark, we let people customize and individualize, which is good, because we want them to be an expression of themselves in the community. But all you have to do is look at the word community and you realize that the word common, meaning we're all here for sort of the bigger common good. And everybody's home, their front yard, is part of that contribution to the bigger whole. So everybody has an obligation to not just do what they want, but to do what really is best for the community. Design review and the design guidelines set forth a framework and a process that allow people to do those. They allow them to customize and individualize, and yet we hold the big picture together so that 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years from now, this place is probably better than it was when it started. And that, to me, is the real reason for design review.
That's great. Thinking specifically about Eastmark, and you've worked on a number of master plan communities, but what's unique about Eastmark's design guidelines?
Well, so I love the fact that Eastmark is kind of like real neighborhoods for real people. You know, I've toured projects all around the country, and some are very high end, and some are very unique. But I mean, Eastmark is meant for real people, real working people, families, and things like that. And the character in the neighborhoods, just from the street character, how the streets are laid out, how the parks are arranged, to the variety of the architecture, to how setbacks and all of that work, and then the individualization that happens in each house from colors, materials, and styles. It gives a strong sense of real neighborhood. It gives people a sense of identity. You know, I've been to the suburban sprawl where every house looks alike, for example. And we used to joke, you know, people would describe, how do you get to your house? Well, I'm the third one past the transformer, because they all looked alike. Or you hear stories of people, I don't know which house is yours. What's the one that's got the red car parked in the driveway? Well, at Eastmark, people identify where they live and even give directions to how they live differently. They'll say, you know, take this street and then you turn by the park, and we're the third one down that's got the, you know, the stone on the front of the house. It's that individualization. There's a lot of places, particularly in Phoenix, that it's monotonous, it's anonymous, where here there's a lot of individuality. And we like that to create neighborhood sense, because that way each of our residents can express themselves, but all within, as I said earlier, it's kind of this bigger holistic context of what we want the community to be long term.
I love it. So now turning to, you work with our design review committee to help. So applications come in, our team processes them, and then you help as the architect work through with their design review committee. What are the marks of an application that a resident might submit that just flies through the process? What are the ones that you just make your heart sing?
The easiest way to answer that is if one of our residents reads the guidelines, they will get through the process easily. Now, I realize the guidelines are big, and they may be a little scary to somebody who's maybe not even familiar with HOAs and things like that, but you don't have to be worried about having to read all the pages. So let's say you're going to do a backyard project, and you're going to put in a swimming pool, a barbecue, and a shade structure. All you have to do, guidelines are online. You can log in to your resident account, you can download the guidelines, look them up online, and you can say, take me to shade structures, take me to swimming pools, take me to barbecues. You're now reading one page for barbecues, one page for swimming pools. I think it's 2 or 3 pages for shade structures. Everything you need to know is right there in the guidelines. And when we find is the homeowners that go to the effort to read those, to understand them, typically go through the process so much easier. It's the ones that don't even take the time to read. So we encourage people, look at the guidelines. They're easily accessible, they're easily available, and they cover everything. They really do. And the other part is people who submit incomplete applications versus those who submit complete information. You know, it's hard to review anything that's not complete. Now, fortunately, the guidelines have some stuff in, I think it's Appendix G, that talks about the submittal checklist of what you submit. What I always say to someone is pretty simple. Answer the basic kind of questions is, what is it? Tell us what it is. Where is it? How far is it from the property line? Where is it located on the house? Where is it located in the yard? What does it look like? How big is it? What size is it? What color is it? What material is it? If you can answer all those questions, pretty good chance you're going to sail through design review. The challenge is always people, they have in their mind what they want to do, but they don't always know how to explain it. But we found that if you kind of ask those questions, we actually have a page in the guidance, kind of those very questions. What is it? Where is it? How, you know, that kind of thing. If you answer those questions, then you come through the process so easy. And I'd say we have quite a few of our residents who do. They'll take the time, they'll read the guidelines, and they're happy as can be because they sailed through. We also find for a lot of people, if they follow our guideline criteria, it makes it easier for them in their contract to explain to their contractor what to do. And the last thing you want is your contractor not to know what your intention is. So there's some other benefits that come through this design review process because they have to sort of think through their own projects in enough detail to explain them to us and to explain it to their contractor. And that those usually go through pretty quickly. But those who just decide, hey, I'm going to scribble something and just submit it arbitrarily without sort of thinking it through, they're the ones that sometimes have to go through 2 or 3 versions until we can get all the information to explain it to us.
Flip side of the same question. What are the 2 or 3 most common didn't get it things that just come up that people intuitively want to do? What projects, what issues with specific projects?
Well, the good news is I think the guidelines, the design guidelines as written, probably cover 99.5% of any normal, ordinary improvement someone would want to do at their home on the outside. I mean, the guidelines have been built on decades of experience of doing design review, so we've kind of got a sense for what are the things that people want to do. So the good news is they're covered. So read the guidelines. That's going to get you there. But the stuff that sometimes does make it a challenge is, we won't get photographs, for example. Well, people say, well, I'm doing something in my backyard. Why do I need to submit photographs of the front of the house? Well, we want to understand the style, the architectural style of your house, the color palette, the character, so that we can make sure that what you're doing in the back relates to the bigger picture. Sometimes people don't submit photos of where they're even putting the improvements, or they try and use just verbal descriptions. I want to put this in the backyard, but they don't tell us enough information. Information is important because without it, they have to explain to the full committee and to me what their intent is. Now, we're pretty good at interpreting that sometimes, but the more information they give us, the better chance they have of getting through the process quickly. Also, we find is if you give us enough information, if maybe there's a little piece or 2 missing, we can often write a stipulation or give an explanation, which allows them to still move forward because we have a pretty good understanding. They understand what they're doing. But when we get incomplete or very vague, those are the ones that I know it makes the staff, it makes me as the reviewer, and it makes the committee just not know how to evaluate what their request is. And so that information is important.
And then finally, at our community life team, we see a big value of ours is we talk about partnership and collaboration, that we are here to serve, to partner and to collaborate with residents. How do you see your work as a consultant working with design review as collaborating, partnering with residents here at Eastmark?
Well, I would say that a couple parts to that. First is I look at what I do as the reviewer and what the committee does as the review body is trying to carry out and continue and implement that vision that was established by the master developer. So sometimes people, especially people who come from other states or other parts of the country, aren't familiar with what works in Arizona, what colors work, what materials work. So we're sort of able to help them through recommendations and suggestions, and even in some of our reports, we'll do diagrams and drawings to help them understand, because some people just aren't familiar with the unique characteristics that Arizona has. And so while they might have had, for example, a natural wood shade structure in California because the moisture and the air quality was fine, here you come and the wood dries out, and we don't want them to be disappointed that they have it. So I think that, the committee is, my job and the staff and the committee, we're not trying to be the people stomp on your dreams of what you want to do. Instead, we want to help give you tools and information and resources to make your dreams not only happen, but stay maintainable and durable. So sometimes we'll give them suggestions, recommendations, how to do things. We'll diagram it, draw it up sometimes to help them. And that's part of that partnership, because we're not here to just say yay or nay. It's how do we help them fulfill their goals and dreams as residents and keeping it in that context of the bigger picture.
Very good. JT, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Happy to be here.